Blockbuster. It's awesome. It's informative. It's entertaining. I'm just curious, how did the project originally come about?
This we wanted to do a project that was more narrative instead of a documentary kind of thing. So it was the merging of a couple different skill sets, which was one kind of the research and journalistic side of that, which is the thing that I was familiar with from my background in journalism. You obviously are familiar with. And then kind of the additional, merging that with a film production execution, and basically bringing in people who have, specialized creative skills in trying to build sound design and obviously working with voice actors and essentially creating something that didn't feel like it was, here's how it was all done. It felt more like this is all happening and you get to be along for the ride as a listener and kind of see how things unfolded and kind of create that story arc of this really important period in history. So I think with, and you think of how many things Steven Spielberg and George Lucas have influenced, and John Williams as well, have influenced over the last 40 years, and you almost can't, you'll run out of air before you'll run out of things to mention, and I think it's almost an impossible thing to do at a documentary level. And so we kind of said, let's go back to the start of this, where there was that first kind of explosion of ideas that happened with George Lucas and with Steven Spielberg, and beyond that, what's the story of their relationship? Because they were friends long before they hit it big with their huge, this unprecedented success, and they relied on each other for things, and that part of this story and how they kind of bounced ideas and supported each other, I think was really interesting, and it's never been told before.
And you would call this an audio biopic or a podcast? You said it's definitely not a podcast, right? It's a story. You said it was a biopic set to sound, I believe. It's interesting because we've done something with. We've essentially created a movie that is done in audio only, and so we've pushed back a little bit against the word podcast, because a lot of people think of podcast as like, oh, that's somebody talking about their favorite movie in their garage, and it's just somebody with a microphone. You know what I mean? Like people still kind of assume, oh, it's a podcast, so it's just them talking about what they like and whatever. And obviously, there are amazing podcasts and there are boring podcasts. So not to take away anything from the medium, but a lot of people, if we first tell them like Blockbuster is a podcast, they go, oh, okay, so you're just talking about like George Lucas and Steven Spielberg and how you like them and whatever. And we have to go, no. This is, we structured this like a film. Right.
It's characters. You don't hear, my voice is in it as a narrator, kind of stitching together scenes, but this is put together in scenes that are thoroughly researched and then performed, and they all form part of a story arc that goes kind of the start of all of this greatness that these real life people experience. So that's a long way of saying I guess it's a podcast. We've heard people describe it as a biopod. It's like a biopic podcast, which is a little bit clumsy, but it's accurate, I guess. So maybe,
I would even call it almost like a radio play in a way.
Yeah, it is. In a lot of ways, it's Apple Podcast just listed us on their modern radio drama section, and in a lot of ways, you're right. It's taking that kind of the old, the War of the World kind of thing on the radio that people used to enjoy years and years and years ago, and it's kind of merging that with true life and journalism, and so it's the research and journalism of a true crime podcast that kind of merges with the storytelling of a radio drama. So I think that's
It's innovative, it's entertaining, and it's informational, and it's great. I'm just curious, what
where did it start for you? Where did the fascination for these two filmmaking geniuses, where did this come from?
It's interesting because I've never really been a Star Wars fan, but I was a big Spielberg fan.
Mm-hmm.
There was always something about kind of the style that was really interesting. It's the way that it's kind of there's a saying that I think it was Mark Twain said. He said, I didn't have time to write you a short letter, so I wrote you a long one. And any journalist is kind of familiar with that. The best writing that you have is precise and it's poignant and it's meaningful, but it shouldn't take forever to get to the point. And to identify something, it needs to just kind of click. And I think that's what Spielberg does in movies. I think he's been able to really identify something that is, on the surface, it seems simple, but it's kind of these little pieces of really complicated ideas that he's tapping into, and he's just doing it in such a brilliant way. And you see it in these moments of, the bicycle in E.T. going in front of the moon, and like these little things like that are just, there's so much beauty and character and emotion in them. And I've always loved that. And never really, the Star Wars thing never really did it for me. I mean, as a fan, I enjoyed it very casually, but then I came across kind of the origin of Spielberg and how he and George were these, at one point, just these two struggling artists. They're in their 20s that were kind of had these big dreams, and everyone kind of thought they were naive for thinking that. And they actually had this really kind of close relationship that was supportive, and they, I think you see in our series, there are these moments that are these are all real moments that are reconstructed from actual interviews they've done and from books that have come out about this, and from documents and letters. But it's these real moments of them, those two guys, saying, no, I believe in you, buddy. Like this, I think you got a good idea here, and even if other people don't totally see it, you got some potential here, and you should see that through. And that's just like such an interesting thing. Throw away all the movie stuff, all of what Star Wars has become, what Spielberg has become, and these iconic figures. At the heart of it, it's just a story of these creative people that are trying to figure things out and trying to take these really bold ideas and present them and prove their worth. And they almost did it. They almost failed at it all. But it's kind of the story of how they broke through.
Like, I had no idea that Lucas was having those health issues during Star Wars. That was very interesting to know. And scary.
And a lot of people have heard bits and pieces of this. Most of the people that have responded to this series say, like, I knew some of the Star Wars story and a little bit of the Spielberg story from, Jaws and Star Wars and Close Encounters. I had heard part of that, but it feels quite a bit different when it's put into a kind of linear timeline of these guys actually going through these things happening and being in the middle of this disaster of a film, the Star Wars, and all of a sudden you realize none of your special effects shots are done, and that was supposed to be a big part of the breakthrough in this movie, and just having that panic attack set in, and these are actual things that happened where, George rushed himself to a hospital to have him checked out, thinking he was having a heart attack, and the doctor said, listen, you got to stop this right now, because this is going to happen. And it's that kind of amazing thing of him knowing that he can't. This is kind of, he's got to do this because he doesn't feel like he's anything if he doesn't push through with this. And you look at the reward at the end of that, and it's just such a kind of inspiring and optimistic story, I think, at the heart of it.
I guess you'd call this like a bromance / true underdog story. And
there's elements of that. Some people have called it like it's really like a buddy epic. Is what I've heard people, which I don't think that's really a term that I've heard before, but it kind of makes sense because they're both trying to do stuff but relying on each other. Cool.
I'm curious. The research process must have been insane as Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, we started out doing, well, really, I started out early on starting to chart together timelines and just a basic kind of outline of how everything happened. And that was important because I needed to see if there was a kind of a story arc there in the film sense. If there is kind of some promise at the start of this, which I knew there was, and then if there was some major struggle and everything just completely falling apart, and then some way that that's overcome and that they're able to figure that out. And in a lot of ways, it's kind of the hero's journey that George Lucas is obsessed with in Star Wars and in other stories as well. But we started out with kind of starting to piece together that timeline, and then it was trying to make sure that we could do as deep of a dive into their histories as anyone ever has, both original sources, so we were looking at actual on-paper letters and actual, in some cases, interviews that they did way back when that are on film, and they're talking about these ideas, back at the time, because, as you know, as a journalist, you always want to get as close as possible to when something actually happens. Things start to become kind of more mystical and people misremember things, and it becomes different after 30 years. So even what George Lucas would say right now, that happened this way, maybe it happened slightly differently, but it's been remembered differently. And if we could get to the original, as close as we can get to those actual conversations, those actual breakthroughs, those actual moments, that's what gives it authenticity. So we put heavy emphasis on that to make sure that the facts that we were putting in this were true, and we could actually say, there's not very many podcasts that can ever say this is a true story. And we worked with an attorney and his kind of legal team from the very start to make sure that everything that we were putting together is something we could actually represent as this is a true story. And the themes that we were creating weren't made up. It might have been a niche restaurant instead of that one, that kind of thing. But there was, at some point, there was a restaurant. And that was the kind of thing that it's a lot of coordination to do. But once all of the kind of big soft pieces fit together, it was really, really fulfilling and rewarding.
Yeah, it really worked very well. I'm curious, did you get a blessing from Stephen and George?
We didn't pursue that while we were doing this. And there's a couple reasons for that. I'm not sure. I know a couple people at their in their camps are aware of this. So far have been supportive of what we put out. But I'm an investigative journalist, and that's my background, and I did not want to go the route of saying this is an authorized biography, because what I always hear when I hear somebody say that is this is their spin on what happened. Right. And I don't know if that's the case. I don't want to presume that would be by any means, but it's also kind of, if somebody, I don't know, my first thought, if I see something that says, here's the story of Steven Spielberg, and, it's been authorized by Steven Spielberg, I think, are they leaving out the bad stuff? Are they leaving out the things that, are they streamlining certain things that maybe didn't happen or did happen or whatever? All of those questions as a journalist pop up. So it was really important for us to pursue this independently and release it independently. But that said, I sincerely hope that they approve.
Me too. I'm pretty sure they do too. It's a great film. And I'm just curious, what was it like, what was the casting process like for the voice actors?
It was interesting because it was we were merging film production with this kind of abstract thing that, there's only been a few scripted, fairly big budget scripted podcast series. Yeah. And, like there's one that just came out a couple months ago called Blackout, which is interesting, but they took a very different approach in their sound design. And, as an example, they had a whole cast, but they did, they would pan the speaking voices around the room. You know, if that makes sense. If you have headphones on, you can kind of hear someone having a conversation over to your left, and then someone would respond over to your right, and you kind of, it positions you in the middle of something like that, and that's actually the kind of thing that we took a film approach to, because you would never do that in a film. It's too disorienting to see on screen. You can do that with any sound effect, but not with the central dialogue or message. So every character has to be right in the middle, and you feel like you aren't distracted by where something's coming from. So we took a very film approach to everything like that, and that included going with finding actors that had some experience both working with other actors and try to kind of build a rapport between George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, and also just kind of build, you know, we worked with, in film it's called a loop group, and that is essentially all of the, not background, but middle ground. You know, it's the people who are sitting in a restaurant in the 6 tables immediately around you that are saying, oh, yeah, so anyway, we talked with this person on the phone, and they said that the business meeting is a go for about, you know, it's just whatever. It's just babble. But there are specialized artists in, you know, we're lucky to be in Hollywood, but there's specialized people that just do loop groups. And we could go in there and we could say, 1977, here are the movies that are popular, here's some music that's popular, here are the things people are talking about at the time. George Lucas is sitting next to you, but nobody knows that's who it is. And at some point, you know, this woman across from him is going to say, that's your movie, and everyone needs to react to that and say, what? What is that? You know what I mean? So we're actually kind of creating this interaction using the voice actors as the sound design, which is a really cool kind of thing that it's hard to do even in film because you have to match the picture. But here it was something we could kind of start to craft because we had the freedom of being able to do it through audio only.
Nice. Well, it definitely is. It's a wonderful project, and I congratulate you and your team.
Thank you.
I saw all 6 episodes. I listened to all 6 episodes, and I left wanting so much more. You know, I believe you just scratched the surface here. I think, are there any plans to expand?
Yeah, we're throwing around a couple things now. You know, the format of this is different from other projects, which, you know, some of them actually use the kind of a kind of dialogue type of presentation, but they might have one person that you know kind of does all the voices. It's essentially kind of the audiobook style, if you think of that as one kind of narrator. And here we wanted to try to expand that into something that felt a little bit more, you know, you'll probably never get there because ultimately there's either too much exposition, if it's all the characters. Hey, what's that you're holding in your hand, Jenny? You know, about the, you know what I mean? Like, either there needs to be so much that you're like, people never talk like that, or there needs to be a narrator to kind of fill in for having no picture and say where things are. And we took the kind of, let's use strong characters, let's have a narrator that kind of will tie things together and explain the important kind of setting things and what's going on. And, you know, when a character can't say something, we have an option for how we can still present that idea. But really we want people to start to be attached to the characters and not be attached to just the information. So I think there's a season 2 probably in store. Maybe down the line. We aren't quite working on it yet, but we are throwing around some ideas. And yeah, I think there's several other projects that we're kind of exploring that kind of fit this mode too. And again, it's a bunch of film people that are, you know, all kind of exploring the edges of this podcast world, which is a weird jump to make, but as podcasts keep exploding, why not?
Yeah. What other types of projects, what other topics or subjects are you looking at, if you can discuss that?
I can tell you a little bit. I think the one that is probably a front runner at this point, and in some ways it ties into the kind of the existing season of Blockbuster, is James Cameron. And he comes from, when Star Wars comes out, and a lot of people don't know this, but because I don't think there's ever been a full biography on James Cameron. I think it's just been interviews and things like that. He's a very kind of private guy for how huge he is. But he was a truck driver. He was a truck driver, and he went and he saw Star Wars in 1977, and he said, geez, if I ever want to do anything with special effects or with the movies or whatever, like the train's leaving right now, this is, I need to get with the picture, or I'm never going to have anything that looks as good as Star Wars, which now is like, kind of laughable because he's done so much to kind of create that super advanced technology behind things, and has made his own contributions, but that all kind of comes from the start of this Blockbuster era, and just literally being inspired the same way all of us are, to say, all right, this truck driving thing doing nothing for me, I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to go try to shoot, and he did. He went out and he shot a 10-minute short film. And used that to try to pitch some different studios on, an idea that he had, and no one wanted to take him up on it, and ended up just working as a PA for some little TV show or some little kind of B movie that came out, and just over the next couple of years worked his way right up to directing his first film. And so it's another one of those stories that's like, this could be anybody, and it's someone who fought really hard, and sure, there were a few small kind of breaks that they had along the way. He was given his first director job, but then he got fired because he couldn't get any of the shots right. So you have those same stories of this guy who wants it so badly, but can't quite pull it off. And for years and years and years. So I'm saying that's probably a strong contender for another season of Blockbuster.
Okay, so Blockbuster would be the umbrella under which each subject is shed a light on. So every series would be a new director.
Yeah, I mean, we've also talked about going into something that's a little more abstract, the kind of business side of things, and people that are taking these huge, like if we did something like Steve Jobs or Elon Musk or somebody like that, and really dove into the very beginning of these things that we know them for now. And in Elon Musk's case, it's interesting that he's right in the middle of so many things that are kind of sort of taking off, but not quite yet. And there's an interesting place to explore there and kind of the psychology of who that person is. So I think we're doing it from a film, kind of a cinematic perspective. And we'll see. I mean, we could go that round too with kind of the Blockbuster style, but as far as kind of the biopod as we're using it, I think there's a few avenues that we can go that allow listeners to be able to kind of connect with the characters and do it in an authentic way, so that people actually feel like and are comfortable with the fact that everything they're hearing is actually true. It's facts that are pulled together by people who have taken great care.
Yeah, I would actually love to hear a biopod on like the history of Tom Hanks, who's my favorite actor.
Yeah,
I thought that'd be fantastic.
That's true. That'd be really interesting.
So if you need someone as a consultant, I'd love to volunteer my services.
We'll keep that in mind, sure.
All right. Last question. What is your all-time favorite Spielberg or Lucas film?
Well, I think it's probably something we didn't really touch on in this series, and actually feels dated to a lot of people now, but I think it's probably E.T.
Oh, yeah.
There's just, and honestly, I think it comes from, it's from the end of the movie, because 18 minutes. Yeah, I mean, it's like 18 minutes of this extremely powerful music, and it just comes from, I did a documentary a couple years ago about film music, and and we included a clip from the ending of E.T., and it's just like it's a wall-to-wall music, and it's everything from the bicycle chase, 15 minutes in, and it's such a cool, and something that's been kind of mimicked and parodied and knocked off so many times. Stranger Things, and it's such an iconic part of culture, but it just flows. I don't think people realize all the music carrying that emotion for the last 18 minutes of that whole film, right through the big kind of climactic ending, which is, it sounds like a concert. It has a big kind of finale at the end, and if you don't get goosebumps from that at the end, you're a dead human being, because it makes you feel. The
emotions.
I think that's one of my favorites.
Oh my God!
Right.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Well, my personal favorite Williams score is probably Jurassic Park.
I think that's my number 2.
It's that and Hook is like a truly underrated gem, in my opinion.
I agree. Yeah, if the movie was just a little bit better, I think it would be, because it's a solid movie. It's an entertaining movie.
It's a little long, but
it's a little long. They probably could have punched it up a little bit. We're just by Spielberg standards too. This is the downfall of. It's the bad thing about being so visionary is even things that are pretty good, people say, not a huge fan. But yeah, you're right. And the music for that is great too.
Beautiful score. Oh, Matt, I could talk to you forever about Spielberg, but tell everybody, how can they listen to Blockbuster? How can they access it?
It's on all podcast platforms. It's called Blockbuster, all one word. You can search it there. I think we're also listed under Modern Radio Dramas as of today. I think that's all active now. And obviously if you're on Spotify or something else, we're also on there. It's totally free, and it's ad-free. We're doing a weird thing with the business model side of this, which is we're not going to tell you about toothbrushes or mattresses every 7 minutes. We're just going to give you the story. And if you like what you're hearing, we'll ask you at the end if you'd consider throwing a couple phones. We'll give you a soundtrack and all the kind of original stuff like that, premium stuff. But we want people to be able to enjoy the experience first. And if they like it, maybe throw us a couple bones.
Okay. Awesome. Well, Matt, thank you so much for your time today. And I'm just curious, where are you located? I meant to ask.
I'm in L.A. right now. For the most part, I'm based here. It's a good creative place to be. And we do have access to just some of the best. I'm a big composer guy. I love original music for stuff. And we did the original score for Blockbuster out here, and it was just so cool. I really, really like, in a very kind of selfish way, aside from the story altogether, really like the score that our producers put together for that. And it's so cool that there's a concentration of these kind of film people out here that we can work with for something that's not a film, but maybe feels like a film in some way.
Indeed. That's awesome. Well, also, if you're ever in New York, we have a studio here in Long Island. I'd love to have you stop by maybe for an in-person interview if you're available.
That'd be great. Yeah, totally down.
Cool. All right, Matt. Well, thank you so much for your time today. This was great. Spielberg is my favorite filmmaker, and just talking about him for just a few minutes with you, this was really, really cool. So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Randy. I really appreciate it.